All right, it's the Monday before the first weekend of games in the college football season, the actual week 1, not counting week 0. So, of course, we got a lot of college football to talk about, right? Well, we got some college basketball stuff because just before the weekend, but after we taped our last Morning Pitt, some news is pretty relevant for the Pitt basketball program. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll get to some football items as well as we recap everything from the weekend here on the Monday edition of the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Monday. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and it's the Morning Pitt with me, Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. See the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. Panther-Lair.com, and of course our YouTube channel right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. Yeah, the practice highlights are done, but we've still got plenty of videos we're going to be putting out here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com throughout the season. We'll have these daily Morning Pitt videos Monday through Friday. We have our live show every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett get together and talk a little Pitt sports. That's always a lot of fun to do. I'm sure we'll have things to talk about this week. And we'll still have press conferences and interviews and things like that. And it'll all be right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of it. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then you saw the image that just popped up a second before the picture of Brandon George jumping in the air. It's Homefieldapparel.com. You guys know about Homefield. I'm not going to stop talking about Homefield, partially because they sponsor us here on the podcast, but also because they're great. Have you seen the bomber jacket? It's incredible. I mean, it is an incredible jacket. And if you haven't seen it, go right now. Go to Homefieldapparel.com. Leave this browser window open. Open a new browser window. And go to Homefieldapparel.com and go to the Pitt collection and check out the bomber jacket. It's amazing. You will look at it and say, holy cow, that thing rules. And it does rule. And if it's your first time shopping at Homefieldapparel.com or the first time using a certain email address on Homefieldapparel.com, enter the promo code LAIR23, LAIR23, to get 15% off your first order. So go check out the bomber jacket. Check out the dad hats. Check out the awesome Pitt logos and marks that they've got there. And I mean, shoot, after you've filled your quota of Pitt things you need, go look at some of the other schools. They just dropped an Ole Miss collection that's incredible looking. They tap into the best of these college sports brands and university brands for a vintage look, a classic look. It's instantly recognizable. You look at their Pitt stuff and you know it is Pitt. And some of it says Pitt is it. But if it's your first time, remember you use the promo code LAIR23 and get 15% off your order. LAIR23. You'll see that pop up here throughout the video. So make sure you go back and go get some sweet stuff from Homefield. You won't regret it. All right. That's a segue. Regret. So the news came on Friday. I mean, you've seen it by now. Dior Johnson. And I want to use the language specifically. I want to use the specific language that came in an email from Pitt. Dior Johnson is no longer enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh. And there's a lot of things to say about this. There's a lot of ways to cut it. And we'll look at, as many angles as are relevant. Dior Johnson is no longer enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh. And I think right in that statement, and certainly we got sources and things like that beyond the statement who kind of confirmed some of these details, but right within that statement, I think you hit at the crucial point here, that Dior Johnson is no longer a student at the University of Pittsburgh. That email, that press release, that statement didn't say Dior Johnson is no longer a member of the University of Pittsburgh men's basketball program. It had nothing to do with basketball, and had nothing to do with Jeff Capel. It had nothing to do with the athletic department. It was sent by an athletic department representative because they have the email addresses for all the sports beat writers. But Dior Johnson is no longer enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh because this wasn't an athletic decision. This wasn't a matter of whether or not to reinstate him to the basketball program. The athletic department wasn't a decision made by the athletic director. It wasn't anything like that. This was a university decision to remove Dior Johnson from the University of Pittsburgh. That's an important place to start. Roll back the clock here on Dior Johnson and everything, just in case you came in late or some things you missed. Dior Johnson, 4-star point guard, one of the top prospects in the recruiting class of 2022. Commits to Pitt, signs with Pitt last summer, shows up on campus, gets there a little bit later than some of his teammates, but he got there, he made it. In September, an incident happens with him and a female acquaintance. The details of which are in criminal complaints and allegations, some negotiated down, some still there for the public to read. You can find these things. Suffice to say, the details and allegations were not good. Charges finally filed following an investigation in October. Once the charges were filed, Dior Johnson is suspended from the Pitt basketball team, but also suspended from the University of Pittsburgh. And again, we come to an important point here, that this is not just about athletics. He was, in the phrase that's become quite common, and I realize this was even used back in October and November, he was persona non grata, not taking classes in person. I presume still taking classes online, but he was not welcome on the University of Pittsburgh campus. Dior Johnson was not. By December, he had gone to trial. He pled down to, I think some of the charges were dropped, and he ended up pleading to 2 misdemeanors. One for, simple assault, and one for strangulation. Strangulation sounds a lot more severe than a misdemeanor would seem to imply, but those were the charges. That's what he pled to. Case closed. Quite literally, the case was closed at that point. Shortly after Christmas, Johnson, or maybe right before, right around Christmas, Johnson was reinstated to the university and the basketball program. No longer persona non grata. He can attend classes in person. He can be around the team. He can practice. He can participate again. He was a University of Pittsburgh student again, first and foremost, and he was a University of Pittsburgh student athlete, a University of Pittsburgh men's basketball program, men's basketball player once again. That's around Christmas. In the time since then, he spends the whole spring semester with the team. I don't know if he traveled to games, but he was at all the home games. He was practicing and participating. Throughout the summer, he's practicing with the team. He's participating with the team. He goes to Spain with the team. He travels to another continent with the team. And on Friday, August 25th, basically on the eve of classes starting for the fall semester in 2023, the 2023-24 academic school year, academic calendar beginning in just a few days, Dior Johnson is removed from the University of Pittsburgh. Not just the basketball program, not the athletic department, the university. Because this decision, as you've no doubt seen it reported, we talked about it on Friday night on the message boards. We put a lot of insight and info there. I put some things out there. Matt Steinbrink, our basketball writer, put some things out there. This was a decision made by the university. Not the athletic department, the university. It was a university-wide decision made by the groups and parties within the university leadership and administration that make these kinds of decisions. That does not mean it was new Pitt Chancellor Joan Gable. And this was sort of this wasn't the immediate assumption. All right. The first assumption, the first speculation when news came out that Dior Johnson was no longer enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh, the first speculation, if you go back and look through online, on Twitter, on the message boards, the first speculation was he quit. He quit on the team. He didn't want to play behind Carlton Carrington and Jalen Lowe, so he quit on the team. Well, that wasn't it. Then it became the athletic department kicked him out. Jeff Capel kicked him out. Heather Light kicked him out. That wasn't it. Then it became, okay, it was the university. The chancellor did it. This new chancellor who's been here just for a few weeks, just for the summer basically, decided to put her foot down and kick this kid out of school. That wasn't it. What happened here, the way the process went, the way the decision was made, as far as I can tell, was bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. From the top. Shifting around, who's going to take care of this, who's going to deal with this, who's going to resolve the situation, who's going to make the ultimate call to bring back someone accused of assault, someone who pled to assault and strangulation, someone who is accused of even more severe crimes than that. Who's going to say, we'll take him back? Who's going to be the group that takes responsibility for putting him back on the University of Pittsburgh campus, even though he was already reinstated back then? And eventually, after much shifting and delaying and moving around, the decision was reached. And the decision was reached and announced on Friday, just before the start of the school year. Now, I'll make one thing clear, okay? And I don't typically... these kind of situations don't come up very much, don't come up very often. I don't typically offer too much opinion on some of the things I'm about to say, the subject matter that I'm about to get into, and the kind of topics we're about to discuss. I don't usually offer too much in the way of opinion. I try and stand back, let facts, be what they are, and then evaluate and analyze what falls out from the facts. But I'll say this. If in October or November or December, the University of Pittsburgh had decided, no, you're not coming back. We're kicking you out of school. We can't have someone even with those allegations on campus. The university had decided that, they wouldn't have gotten any argument from me. I think that would have been a fair decision to make, and one that you could probably even support if you're so inclined to do so. If they had decided to do that, obviously they'd be well within their right to do so, and I think that would be a perfectly appropriate response to the situation. I also, certainly very much believe in second chances, and if the university and all interested parties believe that it is in everyone's best interest for him to come back to school, then yes, do it. I'm not going to sit here and complain about the fact that Pitt kicked Dior Johnson out of school. He obviously put himself in a situation where something like this could happen. Regardless of what his participation ultimately was, and look, none of us really know. We know what he was accused of, and we know what he pled guilty to. And I think it's possible he pled guilty just to get the case done and over with in the hopes of being reinstated sooner and getting back to the life of a student athlete. But that's beside the point. I can understand why the university would make that decision, and so I'm not going to sit here and complain about that. What I will complain about is the process and the timing. How could he have gone to Spain? Like, how could you get so far down the road believing that everything was in the clear that you take him on an international trip, only to find out just a couple weeks later, no, actually, he's so far not in the clear that he's actually kicked out of school? I have an issue with that, and I don't think it was the chancellor. And I do want to state that again because I think it's important. And I've talked to a bunch of people over the last 3 days discussing this very matter, and I don't think it was the chancellor. I think if anything, I don't know if any chancellor could make sort of a unilateral, absolute veto situation. I think there are, processes and hierarchies and, flow charts and all those kinds of things for how a decision like this is reached. And ultimately, I think, the chancellor certainly being new, I think makes it a little bit more of a unique situation. Maybe down the road she would have more input in things like this, but I don't think this decision was made. It certainly wasn't made exclusively by her, and I'm not sure. Like, I don't even think you could look and say this is the work of Joan Gable. I think this happens this happens through other administrative groups within Pitt's leadership. But now the decision is made. And to be honest, if I'm Jeff Capel, I'm probably pretty mad. But probably pretty mad. I don't know how Heather Lyke would feel. I'm not sure what her reaction would be to this. But if I'm Jeff Capel, I'm probably pretty upset about how this all went down. And again, you know what? Jeff Capel very well may sit back and say, look, if you had done this in November, I get it. I understand. I knew it was a possibility, and I would have accepted it. I would have been disappointed because I felt like we could have helped the kid, but I would have understood and accepted it. But to wait until now, to do it right before the school semester starts, and never mind the impact on basketball, right? Like, we could talk about the basketball impact on this. Like, never mind the impact on basketball. You're talking about a kid who's presumably taking summer classes and is getting ready for the fall semester to start in like 3 days, and you kick him out of school. on the doorstep of the fall semester. What options have you left that kid with? And maybe Pitt would say, well, we have no obligations as a student athlete. The student athlete put himself in a situation where he put all of that at jeopardy or in jeopardy. And I understand that. But I think if I'm Jeff Capel, I'm saying, boy, you really didn't give this kid any options. You kind of screwed him over. Never mind what it does for us athletically. Is this really the best thing for this young man? I have to think that's probably Capel's reaction. I mean, he hasn't called me up and told me or sent me an email of what his reaction is, but I have to think that's probably it. Now, I don't think he would ever say that publicly, but I got to think that's what his reaction is. And again, not from a basketball perspective, but on the basketball end, this cuts down the guard depth. There's no question about it. It's funny if you listen to the Friday edition of the Morning Pitt. We did the mailbag, and somebody asked me, Pitt starting point guard in this upcoming season. You taking Dior Johnson or the Field? And I actually kind of talked myself into the Field on that. So I kind of got that one right. Now, I didn't get it right for the reasons I thought I was getting it right, but I actually kind of got it right. I do think it's entirely conceivable that Carlton Carrington's emergence as a viable point guard changed how the Pitt staff was looking at Dior Johnson and his role on this team this season. I think I went through most of the offseason thinking Dior Johnson's the starting point, and it all is going to kind of flow from there. It's going to be Johnson, Leggett, Austin, Hinson, Federico, with, Jalen Lowe as the backup point, Bub Carrington as the backup two, and, so on and so forth, falling out from there. That's what I believed going through the whole offseason. A lot of people believe that going through the whole offseason. But the way Carlton Carrington has emerged as a viable point guard option, I think it changed what the view was, because, and you saw it in Spain where Carrington started the first game at point guard. But I think the expectation of Dior being the starting point, I think changed as Carrington emerged. And so, when you look at what this team is now, it would be nice if they could get another veteran guard, even at this point. Somebody decides to do a late summer grad transfer, go grab somebody who would have been, if Dior would have gotten kicked out of school in like May or June, maybe Pitt would have had better luck landing a senior transfer or veteran transfer point guard over the summer. That didn't happen, largely because it looked like Pitt's guard room was stacked. And guard roster was stacked with Johnson, Carrington, Lowe, and Leggett. But now you're down to just those three. Carrington, Lowe, and Leggett. Now the upside there is that all three of them can handle the ball. It's not that traditional point guard role. It's not how this team plays. It's not how a lot of teams play anymore. But you want to have three guys who can, or you want to have multiple players who can set things in motion and ultimately drive and make plays. And I think they have that in Carrington, Lowe, and Leggett. And probably Carrington's emergence as a viable point guard is what looms largest there, I think. So I think that's what they're going to look like. I mean, I think they'll try to get another guard. The reality is, they were obviously never going to go 11 deep or 12 deep. Now they're down to 11. They went from 13 down to, they never had 13. They had 12. Now with Johnson gone, they're down to 11. They were never going to go 11 deep or even 10 deep. The rotation was always going to be like 7 or 8 deep. So I'm not as concerned about having only 11 guys on scholarship as I am concerned about having some pretty light guard depth. And I'm not really sure if there's a solution to that out there. So a lot of thoughts there, a lot of different angles, a lot of elements, a lot of, strange to keep in the old duder's head when it comes to the Dior Johnson situation, but unfortunate all around. I think it'd probably be a pretty mild way of saying it. Screwed up from the very start. Dating back to last September, we're, coming up on 12 months since the incident since this whole thing really began. And I think we all knew, some people said it louder than others, but I think we all knew there was at least some chance Dior Johnson would never actually play for Pitt, even last summer when he was, committed and signed and all that. So here it is. He's not going to play. All right. Anything? What else to recap from the weekend? So they're up to Pitt football has put 3 walk-ons on scholarship now. Caleb Junko for winning the punter job, Nick Lappy for being a top backup linebacker, and then Jake McConaughey for filling out that the wide receiver depth room. He became the third walk-on to go on scholarship this summer. That should put them at 85 scholarships. We'll see if he plays. We'll see how he figures into that wide receiver room. He's a good player. Won the dunk contest a couple years ago and has had a good summer, I think, working in this offense, his second year in the offense. And he's a talented, big, tall receiver. So maybe he'll have a chance. Maybe he'll have a chance to make an impact. But we'll see. We'll see. You know, I still think you're looking at Bub Means, Kanate Mumfield, Kenny Johnson, Dejon Reynolds, but there's room for 5 and 6 in there. You know what I mean? That's only 4 guys. I think there's room for 5 and 6. It could be Zion Fowler-El. It could be Jake McConaughey. There's a lot of options in there. And I probably should figure out if it's McConaughey or McConaughey. So I've just sort of confirmed that I don't exactly know how to pronounce his last name, but I'll double check on all that and get it. We'll get it right by the next time. But I mean, the big news from the weekend though was Dior. Not exactly how I thought we would start off the Monday of the first game week of the season, but the news is the news, and you got to follow that news. Listen, Pat Narduzzi's got his first in-season press conference today. That'll be at noon. We'll have video of that and transcript online at Panther-Lair.com this afternoon. And then tomorrow we're going to break down some of the things that stood out from Narduzzi's press conference. We'll do that every Tuesday of the season. So we got a lot of stuff planned. We got some good stuff for Wednesday and Thursday and Friday as well. So should be fun doing these morning pits during the season. It certainly was last year. We made it through August. I mean, it's still the 28th, but it feels like we're out of August and into football season now, all counting down to Saturday when Pitt hosts Wofford at Acrisure Stadium. Looking forward to that. For sure. So thanks for tuning in today. I hope you had a great weekend. Listen, HomefieldApparel.com, promo code LAIR, LAIR23, LAIR23. That way you get 15% off your first order. HomefieldApparel.com, promo code LAIR23. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then head over to the website, Panther-Lair.com, for the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news and the best online Pitt community that you're going to find. Panther-Lair.com. Thanks for checking out the video today. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope your Monday and your week get off to a great start. We will catch up with you tomorrow for another Morning Pit here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.